Hi there, I'm Jonathan.
Ren, Justin.
And we are
looking forward.
Last week, Reynolds wanted to discuss iterative artificial intelligence. This week is artificial learning enhancement. So, Reynolds, would you care to define that? I have a feeling I'm going to learn a lot this episode.
Yeah, because that just went over my head, so please.
Well, for quite a number of years now, chemical enhancements have been being used for education. ADHD medicine is routinely found either by prescription or other methods by students in top universities to enhance their focus and ability to learn.
Mm-hmm.
In recent years, other new methods or enhancements are emerging. One of them actually just managed to garner itself an FDA warning a couple of weeks ago, in which the student does direct electronic stimulation of the brain while studying, which is shown very low level direct electronic stimulation of the brain, but it's shown to enhance retention and focus by about 10%. However, we have absolutely no idea what side effects it can have. So there is
Scalp burns.
I don't know.
No, I think I read an article on this with flight simulators. We had an electrode cap
Theo, yep.
put on people's heads, and there were two things that they noted in the article. One is that just putting a cap on that's electrocuting you isn't enough. You have to target the right parts.
Yep.
Which is difficult and requires a lot of technical expertise. And the other thing is that even with that, apparently you can get scalp burns. So.
And God knows what effects on your neural systems later.
But, if I recall right, they learn to fly an aircraft 33% faster.
This is why people are doing it.
Yep.
This is also why there's a warning now about it. That is one form of artificial learning enhancement. A very, very interesting one that has had a paper or two published on it, however, is neural feedback that leads to neural feedback without presentation, which means there isn't anything for the person to look at or hear that's supposed to teach them anything. So basically they're talking about uploading information to the brain. The studies appear to be positive on this, that some information can be uploaded to the brain as long as there is sufficient plasticity in the cortex. However, it does not appear that critical thinking skills, ethics, or the ability to properly utilize the information can necessarily be uploaded. Which is particularly interesting since the four scientists who were quite involved in the article that I read in full were really after a way of rehabilitation. I'm not completely sure how I should read that, but it clearly works for
Prisoner rehabilitation?
They didn't say.
Okay. Oh, good.
But the article is very, very interesting, and the idea, if it's replicated, I expect people to be uploading information very quickly. You have some of the transhumanists who are talking about chipping for coprocessors. The head of the Transhumanist Party of America, Zoltan Istvan, has been chipped, although not in a manner that would allow him to coprocess. We don't have that capability yet, but he did have a chip inserted.
Co-processing is?
Co-processing would mean that you used a computer to enhance your brain. You would have some sort of a functional CPU in you, presumably drawing electricity off your body's neural circuits, I would think, that would then be adding
Just
its
enough.
processing power to your brain's processing power to speed up or make more viable your reasoning processes.
So, as an example of this, from I think that was the 90s, there was a cyberpunk. We talked last time about cyberpunk. There was a cyberpunk setting called Shadowrun, and one of the things they had were subprocessors, and they had math subprocessors. So if you need to do calculus, you basically think of the problem, feed it into the subprocessor, and then the subprocessor feeds you back the answer.
Well, of course, what is probably going to
So,
be much more along
sure
the line you
that's-
just described is Kurzweil believes, and I have no reason to dispute, although I don't know. Kurzweil proposes that within 15 years, I believe,
I think early 2030s.
yeah, 15 or so years, we will be in a situation where we use nanite clouds to interact with our brain and connect us directly, if you would, to whatever version of the internet exists at that point.
This hybrid thinking.
Yes, and that would allow you to give the calculus program to the computer and get the answer back through the nanites. My only question on that is if we will actually develop that type of nanites quite that quickly. I don't have any doubt that it's coming. It's how quickly.
Can somebody pinch me? Is this real life?
I think so.
I mean,
Yeah.
wow.
Or is it just fantasy?
Or is it just? I mean, but what we're talking about here, I mean, this is whether it's 15 years or even some of artificial learning enhancement. You think relatively quickly that this could begin to happen. I mean, are we talking within the next 5 years or sooner?
I think the use of neural stimulation is going to occur. I don't think it can be stopped. I think it's going to occur even if it's dangerous. And that clearly, yeah, I would say within 5 years you'll see that. That's the simplest version of what we're talking about.
So, and I mean, it's humans, this transhumanist humans becoming more
More trans and less
Yeah.
human?
more robotic, like,
yeah.
but yeah,
It's the integration of us with
of
our
AI.
technologies.
yeah, humans are getting AI, and I mean, so at that point, I mean, what's the difference between human beings if it's all available all the time, any time?
Presumably, our human experiences and morality would not cease. Presumably, we would continue to have a capacity for love, a capacity for emotion, a capacity for sorrow. We would feel loss. And presumably, the computers wouldn't. And neural stimulation with an electronic field is not, and the 33% you said is quite impressive. That's higher than
I think that's right.
anything I'm
yeah,
aware
I'll
of.
have to link to the article.
But it clearly aids in learning, and that's going to come quickest, I think.
So, this is, I mean, I think a lot of people hearing this for the first, I mean, this is starting to get, wow.
It's part
How
of
do we adapt? You know, it's one thing that, you know, computers, put them on our desk, smartphones, I can keep them in my, pocket or in my hand, but you're talking about something that seems very different here. How do we...
It is very different. It's very, very different. I should note, I am something of a worrier about this type of technology. We don't know what the side effects of neural stimulation are. We don't know what the long-term effects of any form of direct interface would be. So in that sense, it worries me. I also recognize the inevitable, and the inevitable is, oh my God, it makes me learn quicker. If I can learn 15 or, good Lord, 33% faster, students are going to do it, particularly and where they're seeing
And
it
workers.
now. Yes.
And what'll happen if you don't do it?
Knowledge workers.
Well, that's one of the great moral questions of a lot of things that are emerging now. If you don't do it, you're going to be less successful.
Not just stuff that's emerging now. That question has been going on for decades.
That's true.
Look at sports.
Yeah.
If you don't, if they have steroid use and it's not limited, you have to use it,
Yeah.
or you get left behind.
Yeah, you can't play the game.
Right.
That's right. right.
Or you can,
So
but you just can't. You can't play it at that level anymore.
That's why it's restricted. That's why it's banned in professional athletics. But this isn't something that This is an entirely different thing than that.
Yes. Well, yes, and
This isn't steroids. This is
Well, in a way, but it's
Yeah.
not. But it's
it becomes unavoidable because whether America does it or not,
this is real life.
our economic competitors are going to do it.
Yep.
So therefore, and let's face it, the scientists who wrote the paper that I referenced were not Americans. It's going to happen. And in the competitive atmosphere that the present construct of the political economy stresses, we will have no choice but to follow.
How does this relate to people's ability to actually utilize the information?
In the case of neural stimulation,
Mm-hmm.
as far as we can see, those abilities are, the learning process is speeded up. It's not completely artificial, and people learn how to use the information the same as they would in a normal course. In the case of neural feedback, I mean, obviously the data is very limited at this point.
It sounds like it's one study.
It is, as far as I
So-
know. One study and some refinements.
Right.
But it appears that none of the ability to use the data is there. It's a data dump. At least that's the way I read it.
Is there a limit to the storage capacity
We have a clear
Well,
limit.
yeah.
currently?
It's very large, but we have one, yes.
You only have so much gray matter, so many neurons, so many connections you can make.
And so currently, until we either add additional processing units or
Or storage space,
or
which is
connection,
one of, yes.
internet connection. So when do you anticipate, or is it too soon that it's, because right now it sounds like it's just the data dump, but when you can actually use that data, I could anticipate this lifting people out of poverty, out of some of the worst situations in the world, because if you just have the information, I mean, is that the future we're looking at? Like,
It could be. There are three notes I would make here. This is very early findings. I will make sure that the
One study and
link
a
to
few,
the abstract is below.
One study and a few refinements
Right.
could very easily just vanish in
On the other hand,
future research.
it could. I
I'm
suspect
just
it
stating that
won't,
it's a
but it could.
possibility.
Yes, it is, no question.
I have no question, personally, that what we're discussing can happen.
Right.
I'm going to remain skeptical that we found the way to do it until it's verified.
Right. No, it clearly has to be replicated, and
That is very exciting. A little scary, but very exciting.
It is exciting. It has a great deal of potential. The very fact that it was originally being looked at for rehabilitation makes me wonder, and perhaps I should not, I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but it makes me wonder, rehabilitation for who? Rehabilitation how? Are they actually not really looking for a method of uploading information, but of programming people? And we have no idea. Certainly the study reads as simply information stimulating the brain to record this information with no direct stimulus through neurofeedback. Hopefully that's what it is. And if it is, it holds enormous promise.
Or it might also be, if you will, now that I think about it, rehabilitation for people with like learning disabilities and
Yes.
such.
And it could be very, very useful there.
I forget that it is used, that rehabilitation is used that way, because that always seemed more of me to a habilitation, not rehabilitation. You're trying to give someone an ability that they didn't have, which would be also amazing.
Do we anticipate this to, have a very high price tag at first and come down like we've seen with other technologies?
The neural stimulators, the reason the FDA is issuing stern warnings on them is that someone with a reasonable level of competency with simple electronics can build their own. So that makes it pretty cheap. The neural feedback requires more complicated equipment, but given how computer prices in general have come down, I suspect someone with more hardware knowledge than I have could probably build their own unit.
Now, not knowing a great deal about this technology, I'm going to make a blanket guess, if you will, that what we're going to see with this is what we've seen with other technologies. Right now you have to have a great deal of technical expertise to use these correctly. You can build them in your garage, apparently, but hooking them up to the right part of your brain might not be so easy. When you look at computers started off needing huge amounts of technical expertise. You weren't even looking at the English language in the input or the output.
Right.
Now, phones, computers, everyone knows how to operate.
All ages, yeah.
Yeah. So I imagine that the technical expertise will essentially be taken up, as we have with other technologies, by the technology itself over time.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what that'll do to cost.
I mean, I'm imagining here we're going to be, people are going to be, I'm going to go download a PhD today. Oh, I just had a baby and he's just won the Nobel Prize on his...
Yeah, but that's why I asked about implementation.
That's decades away.
Do we think so? Well, hold on. Decades?
Well, number one, while the neural plasticity of an infant is very high,
We'll have to wait and see.
the processing ability is not yet present. So you couldn't have your baby winning the Nobel Prize. Downloading high-level things, I say decades flippantly. I won't live to see it. I doubt you'll live to see it.
But how can you say that? If Kurzweil in the 2030s, this is like 13, 14 years from now.
That technology you may see. But the one you're talking about, where I presumed you were talking about using the program that I was discussing.
We don't know what's going to happen, right?
No.
When I envision what Kurzweil is talking about, I envision, our brains are being connected to the cloud, which contains all of the information of humanity at that time. Now, we already know even today in 2017, there's a ton out there. What's it going to be like then? And so if anybody and everyone is going to have that, not at their fingertips, but at their brain circuits, is that not, that's what,
My big question with downloading information from the web or the internet, the tubes, is how do you sort out all the garbage?
It would be difficult.
That's...
Although there were personal agents as much as 15 years ago. I used a personal agent to go through the web to find data for me. It eliminated duplicate occurring things, and it was pretty accurate. And it was free. So I would imagine they'll have
mostly concerned with the misinformation.
You can't. because what constitutes misinformation? I can't. When I do research, some of the research I look at is bogus. Some of the research I may end up discussing here will be bogus. Because there are thousands of journals now, of which at least a third are pay to play. You pay them, they publish your article, and they get somebody to peer review it. But yet, if you're going to follow research in any field, you have to read those too, because sometimes they're accurate.
So, wow. That is, if you'll pardon the pun, mind-blowing.
Very cute.
And I'm in your position. Allow me.
Thank you for bringing up this topic.
Yeah.
Now it's gonna keep me up all night.
I'm sorry.
Well, with that, like, share, subscribe, comment. At this point, you can give me something to say, because I don't know what else to say about this. It's amazing. Make a response video.
Yeah.
Share your insights, and thank you for watching, and keep looking forward.